So the Riverview School is a school of about 200 students, ages 12 to 22. And we educate children with complex language, learning, and intellectual needs. So our students have language disorders. Some of our students have problems with motor skills. You would describe it as dyspraxia. Our students are not your bright, average dyslexic student. That's not the students we educate. Our students have more global needs, but all are capable of a good degree of literacy, of a good degree of independence, social development, and so forth. But we work with these students from the ages of about 12 through the typical high school years, which is 18 or 19. And then in addition to that, Riverview School offers a post-secondary program, which is designed to prepare students for independent living. We have basic academic subjects that are continued in our post-secondary program, and we also have a program with a local community college where our students receive vocational development skills, and we give a lot of attention to helping them develop self-advocacy, resilience, the ability to manage their own lives, problem solving, and so forth. The other school that we're traveling with for this ISS show and during this visit to London is the Landmark School, and Carolyn Orsini Nelson is the Director of Admissions. And that's a school that's primarily focused on children with dyslexia, language-based difficulties with speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Both of our schools have boarding components. And generally speaking, when you are thinking about, well, why a boarding component, especially for our students, but also for students with dyslexia, a reason that students in the US, families in the US, as well as families from other countries choose that is they recognize that a typical school day of 6 or 6.5 hours is just not sufficient time to meet the needs of children who have needs in a variety of different areas. If a child is in school for a typical 6 or 6.5 hour day, you can do some things very well. Perhaps you can do the academic piece very well, but you just can't do it all. If the child is somewhat slower in their processing and developmentally delayed, they will not be able to keep up with the typical social demands. The learning that happens incidentally, how to learn social pragmatics, how to read a room, how to begin and end conversations with peers, how to advocate for oneself, how to, engage in risk-taking around something you're very interested in but haven't had the courage to try before, how to figure out and learn how to be a member of a team, how to do conflict resolution. All of these important life skills cannot be taught during a 6.5 hour day for children with more complex needs. So in an environment like an American boarding school that focuses on the whole child, where as much attention is given to independent living skills and social skills as is given to academics, because they're seen as equally important for success, not just at school, but life after school and in the work world, then our contention and our experience is that that can't be successfully done within a 6.5 hour day. And so in an environment like ours and other schools that focus on students who have more than just reading and writing, or perhaps they're students with dyslexia who have substantial time management problems, problems with organization, you can help them learn how to organize their homework and their long-term assignments. But what about making plans for the future, plans for the summer, contacting colleges that perhaps they might be interested in, making plans for social and recreational activities. All of that takes a tremendous amount of time, and we find that in a boarding environment, we're able to deliver those services to our students. And what we teach in the classroom, we're able to give our students practice using those skills in a real-life environment. The children who come to our school are children from warm, loving families, I'm sure, like the families who are represented here, just as there are families like these in the United States. Very caring, involved parents who really just want the very best for their children. But the parents we meet are exhausted parents. They're parents who are so eager for their child to have the typical experiences of adolescence and young adulthood, that they're running around trying to piece everything together. This is assuming they haven't found the right school here that helps them with that. If your child has complex needs, then you really need a partner. And I don't mean just your partner for life. You need a professional partner or partners, somebody who will work with you, who will have ideas and recommendations and strategies and approaches to help your child be the kind of young man or woman you know that he or she can be. And it's not possible, even if you have one child only, to do all of that on your own. So we meet families in our admissions office who are really exhausted from trying to piece together the therapies, piece together the social piece, get just the right evaluation, make sure that the diagnosis is correct, so that then they can put together opportunities for the child to develop every aspect of their being, their academics, their social, their independent living, their spiritual, and so forth. So at the Riverview School and other boarding schools, students get the typical 6.5-hour day of good academic instruction with specialists. Most of our teachers are master's level teachers, as they are at the Landmark School as well. They have speech pathologists, access to OT, very small assigned classrooms, maximum of 8 at our school, but very often one-on-one instruction or small group instruction. And that goes out through the course of the day with ongoing data gathering and assessment to ensure that the teaching we're delivering is resulting in the learning that parents and students are looking for. Beyond the traditional academic day, students have all the typical opportunities that their non-disabled peers have to engage in recreation, to play sports, to belong to clubs, to be part of student government, to arrange independent outings in the beautiful Cape Cod community or to Boston, but to go to dances, to learn how to interact as typical teenagers and young adults do. And our older students get instruction in money management, in laundry, in cooking, in traveling independently. We have international students. We will take them to Logan Airport in Boston, because that's where we're located, and they, with support from us, will learn how to travel independently. We right now have students from about 9 foreign countries, and most of them will learn to travel independently or to visit family in New York or perhaps in Florida during a vacation period. So these are all the skills that we're really focusing on for our students to develop. Again, not just thinking about these years that they're at school. They need to be filled with important learning. We need our students to be happy and to feel that they're not different, because in an environment like this, everybody has a learning challenge. So being different is not so different anymore. But we measure our success not just by how they do while they're with us, but how they're doing when they leave us. We believe that if people are going to make a decision to have their child be a boarding student, especially in another country, that we need to change the trajectory of their growth from one that might be like this to one that's going to be more like this. That's the promise we need to make, that the outcomes that result from an experience like this will impact the course of their life well into the future, and not just ensure that the years with us are happy and full of the opportunity to be a typical teenager, to learn hobbies and skills, to reclaim your self-esteem. Because I assume you have children, or you know children who are struggling with their learning, you know what a battering the self-esteem of children with learning differences can take, and how they always feel, or often feel, like they're on the outside looking in, as opposed to being the center of life, and they're the ones who need this add-on extra support. So in the right environment, students feel that, they're just one of the group. And instead, perhaps, of being tracked with the same 5 or 6 students, which sometimes happens if they're in a different setting where they're getting all of these services but nothing is quite working, they're grouped with the same small group of children all the time. Yet at a school where there are 200 or more students, Landmark School has over 400, 450 students, there are many students to choose from to be your friends. And many of the friendships that are developed in boarding schools like ours are friendships that last a lifetime. So we really value our ability to provide an individualized, tailored instructional program to meet the children whom we service. We pride ourselves on the relationships we have with families. We feel that those relationships are every bit as close as the relationships that families have with students in day schools, very often closer, because we welcome the input of parents. We have an open door policy for people to come visit whenever they like. And we know that between the time children come to us and a very short period after that kids are dropping, those feelings of learned helplessness or lack of empowerment or low self-esteem, because the fit is right. And at the end of the day, whether it's in, nursery school, or you're preparing for your A-levels, or at the university level, it's really all about the right fit. And as you can imagine, we have a very detailed applications process, as do other boarding schools in the United States, where we really take our time, because we will not waste a family's time, we will not waste a child's time, we will only select those children where we feel we can make a significant difference in their life. And so our website, just as the website of Landmark, will have tons of information that will be valuable to parents who might be exploring this, that you can look at even before you even think about applying. The other thing that our 2 schools do, and we have found that many of our international families have taken advantage of this, is that we offer summer programs of 5-week duration. So if somebody has perhaps a younger child, for us, we don't accept children under the age of 12. But if you're thinking about it and wondering about it and, not quite sure, but you feel it's something you want to give a try to, then the opportunity to enroll your child in a summer program can be very valuable. We spend half of the day in academic pursuits and then the rest of the time in rich cultural and recreational activities. The Riverview School is located on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. It's about 70 miles south of Boston in a beautiful resort area. So we've access to the ocean and to everything that an area like that has to offer, as well as Boston. It is a 7-hour flight back from London, direct flight to Logan Airport. If you're going in the other direction, I think you can do it in half an hour less, thanks to the prevailing winds. But, and the Landmark School, the other school we're traveling with, is about 45 minutes north of Boston and similarly located along the coast. So that's sort of a general overview of our school. I'm wondering if people have any specific questions about our school, other kinds of schools, differences. Yes.
Excellent. Can I give you the microphone, please? Thank you.
I wondered if you had any kind of scholarships or financial aid for international students that are specifically pegged for British students.
We don't have financial aid specifically tailored for British students or international students. However, we're not opposed to providing financial aid as needed. Obviously we have a limited amount of financial aid, but we have given financial support in the past to international families. We're about attracting and retaining the students who really can get the most benefit out of our program. So it's something we will entertain. Some other schools don't. They only provide it to students within the US, but we will think about that.
Thank you. More questions from the floor?
Maybe a little bit about...
Could I ask
Sure.
a question, which, in fact, the gentleman with the mauve sweater there suggested a very good question. How do I identify somebody who might be appropriate? At what sort of age do you start recognizing SEN, difficulties, problems, whatever?
Right. So students who come to us, families have identified that there are special learning needs there, probably when the children are maybe around 2 years of age. Probably delays in language, maybe in the acquisition of motor skills, difficulty as they enter the early grades, preparatory grades, with acquisition of basic literacy, letter and number recognition. Maybe difficulty with social development. Our students are not students with behavior disorders or emotionally disturbed children. They're just students who have more difficulty than others figuring out how to negotiate those arenas. And children are supported through the elementary grades with various degrees of pull-out support, sometimes with additional instructors in the classroom. But by the time they get to be about 10 or 11, and other children are starting to develop peer groups and get cliquish in their social interactions and trying to meet up with each other at the weekends, students like ours are left behind. And so parents really begin to realize that, giving them support in the typical school environment just isn't cutting it. And then they need to look for another option. And so we require, when people make admissions, intelligence testing. We require measures of literacy skills, basic literacy skills. Any evaluations that have been done by educational psychologists are required for admissions. We ask for recommendations from teachers and from others who know the child. And then we invite this child for an interview, assuming that all of that looks appropriate. We invite them for an interview and a 2-day stay, including an overnight at the school. So we can each see if we're a good fit for each other. And through that process, we generally know our dropout rate is very, very low. The vast majority of students whom we select to be enrolled in our school are students who remain with us for a number of years.
As the Landmark representative, I might just want to add something a little bit different. Just to clarify, our school does begin to accept students in the American Grade 2, which corresponds to approximately age 7. Students don't come to Landmark for their entire school experience. As Maureen said, our students are very capable. They're all going on to college when they leave Landmark, and they come to us at various ages. Parents now understand that we can begin to identify predictors of reading disability in very early ages, even before students learn to read. So very proactive parents might approach us it's second grade or third grade. Because our students are very bright, they might also be well able to compensate in a school setting for many years before their disability really becomes an obstacle for them. Some students don't come to Landmark until their high school grades. And typically the average stay at Landmark is 2 to 3 years. So what we do is we look to identify their particular areas of difficulty, to formulate a very individualized program, provide that intervention, and then our goal is to send those students back to a public school or a private school where they reintegrate with the skill set they need to be successful. The admission process is much like the one that Maureen described with the testing, and again, for all the right reasons. It's all about making sure that we can fulfill the promise we make to you as a family. But one difference is the age groups that we work with, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello? Yes. Thank you very much. Very interesting. That is something that often happens a lot over here, where people are out of the mainstream system for 2 or 3 years and then positively fed back into it, having had the specialist help, and that works extremely well. Would it be relevant for, say, British, UK-based people to come across for 2 or 3 years? What would be the advantage of using your system rather than a UK-based system?
I think it really goes to a matter of fit. I think there are many fine schools in the UK. We're certainly not suggesting that our schools are better, but it's really a matter of what the family is looking for. There are many families who have connections with the US, or for whatever reason just haven't found the right school here. But we do have students who, at the Riverview School, students tend to stay longer because their needs are more complex. But what parents, we had dinner just the other night with the parent of a young lady who had spent 6 years with us. And she saw a much more confident, competent young lady who could now, as in her mid-20s, has a much greater degree of independence than she would have had she continued in the program she had been in. And they're now seeing in every aspect of her life how she is using skills that she learned when she was abroad. There's something about being educated abroad and knowing that you've been able to manage that. I mean, to go overseas, to develop a new peer group, to manage on your own in that setting is really quite an achievement and has quite an impact on a young person's self-esteem.
No, I quite agree. We're living in a global society, and this is a major part that you're playing.
Exactly,
Indeed.
Exactly.
One other point that I might add is that in the week that we've been here, prior to this show, we've been trying to learn much about the British system. And here as well, many schools have said to us that their students are looking forward to attending university in the United States. And so I think that would be another advantage for a student coming to the United States, perhaps for a portion of their education. I think that would help them to better understand the university system, be more familiar with the kinds of locations, environments, size of school that they might be comfortable with, and have the opportunity to visit more schools before making that final commitment to a university.
A lovely trend we're seeing in the US is that more two-year universities or two-year colleges and four-year universities are developing programs for individuals with disabilities. It's been really something that's been quite evident in the last 10 years, and the Riverview School is one of the first schools in the US to have done that. We have a long-standing relationship for about 14 or 15 years with a local community college, but now other schools are doing that as well. So again, just to support what Carolyn is saying, some kids, who are dyslexic, your average and above average intellectual ability, those students will be seeking to enter typical four-year universities and pursue degrees and perhaps graduate degrees after that. There are other students who are perhaps not as capable of achieving at that level, but who certainly can continue their education at the third level and acquire vocational skills for successful employment. And more there are opportunities for that. And I think it is indeed an advantage of being familiar with the system. And another service that we provide are transition services. And obviously we're more knowledgeable about the third level opportunities in American educational system than perhaps in the UK, but hopefully that's something we'll get to know more about over the years. But that's an important part of what we try to deliver to families.
Thank you. More questions from the floor? Well, Maureen, I'm sure you're happy to answer any individual questions privately afterwards.
Yes, I will.
That was all right.
So. All right, thank you.
And it remains for me to thank you for your questions from the floor and to thank Maureen.
Thank you.